29 years old. That is how old you are when you first understand that money at scale does not behave like money. It behaves like weather. It moves in patterns that individuals cannot predict or resist. It responds to pressures that are invisible at the level of a single transaction and only legible when you are looking at $1.4 trillion of it from a desk on the 14th floor of a building whose name does not appear on any public list of significant financial institutions. The fund owns 1.5% of every publicly listed company on Earth. Not manages, owns. The distinction matters. A manager acts on behalf of a client and is accountable to them. An owner holds the asset and answers to no one except the mandate, which was written by a government and amended by a committee that meets 3 times a year in a room you have not yet been invited into. Your title is Regional Quantitative Analyst, Developed Markets Equity. Your salary is $94,000 a year, plus a performance allocation that last year came to $31,400. You model equity positions. On this particular Tuesday, you are modeling the optimal rebalancing of a $340 million equity position across 14 markets in 7 time zones. The position exists because 6 months ago, a portfolio manager decided to increase the fund's exposure to a specific sector. The increase was $340 million. For most of the world, this is an incomprehensible sum. For this fund, it is a rounding decision. The model has to be right. Not right the way a student's homework is right within a tolerance that accounts for liquidity, execution slippage, currency exposure, and the fact that trading $340 million across 14 markets will itself move prices in at least 7 of those markets before the execution is complete. Wrong at this scale does not mean a grade. It means 7 figures of value destruction that will appear in the quarterly attribution report and will be discussed in a meeting that you will attend and that you will not enjoy. You spend 11 hours on Tuesday on the model. You find an error in the correlation matrix at 11:14 p.m. The error is small, a misspecified covariance between 2 emerging market indices that would have produced a position skew of approximately 0.3%. On $340 million, 0.3% is $1,020,000. You fix the error, you rerun the outputs, you send the revised model at 11:47 p.m. No one responds. No one is required to respond. The model is your output. The decision belongs to someone else. You go home. You eat something from a container in the refrigerator. You check the model on your phone before you sleep. It is the same model you sent at 11:47. You sleep for 6 hours and 20 minutes and come back to the desk at 7:15 a.m. and open a new model for a different position, in a different market, in a different time zone, and the process begins again. This is what it is like to work at a $1.4 trillion sovereign wealth fund at the level where the work is done. The work is unglamorous. The work is technically demanding. The work is invisible to everyone except the people who review it. The fund was not built to make you famous. It was built to outlast you. Both of these things are true, and neither of them is a complaint. At $1 trillion, a 0.1% error is $1 billion. The math is the same as it has always been. The consequences are not. This is the thing that takes approximately 6 months to understand and the rest of your career to fully accept. 3 years later, your title is Portfolio Manager, Global Equities, Developed Asia. You are responsible for a $4.2 billion sleeve, the portion of the fund's global equity allocation dedicated to developed Asian markets. Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong. $4.2 billion across approximately 340 individual positions, rebalanced quarterly, reviewed monthly, with a tracking error budget of 80 basis points against the benchmark. You are 32 years old. Your total compensation last year was $412,000. You have 3 analysts reporting to you. You spend approximately 60% of your working hours in meetings. You spend the remaining 40% looking at screens. The first time your trade moves the price against you, you are executing a reduction in a Japanese semiconductor holding. The position is $1.4 billion at current market prices. You want to reduce it by $380 million, approximately 27% of the position over 4 trading sessions to minimize market impact. On the first session, you execute $87 million of the reduction. The stock falls 0.3% during your execution window. The fall is not large. It represents approximately $4,200,000 of additional cost on the position you are still holding. You caused this, not through any error in the model, through the fact of being present. The market saw the selling pressure and adjusted. The market did not know it was you. The market did not need to know it was you. The selling pressure existed, and the price responded to it, and the response cost the fund $4,200,000 before you finished selling. This is what it means when a position is too large for the market it is in. The act of transacting becomes the variable that the model cannot account for, because the model was built on historical prices that did not include you. You discuss this with the head of trading on a Wednesday morning. He is 47 years old and has been executing large block trades since before you graduated from university. He says 2 things. First, spread the execution across 7 sessions, not 4. Second, do not use the same broker for more than 30% of the volume on any single session. You adjust the execution plan. The remaining reductions go more smoothly. The total market impact cost across the full reduction is $6,840,000 on a $380 million trade. This is considered a clean execution. You have learned something that cannot be learned from a model. At this scale, the fund does not find prices. It makes them. Every large trade is a price discovery event for the asset being traded. The fund is not navigating the market. At $4.2 billion in a single sleeve, it is one of the forces that constitutes the market. This is a different relationship with capital than anything taught in a finance degree or a CFA curriculum. It is the thing that separates institutional scale from retail scale in a way that the number alone does not fully communicate. You have a dinner on Friday with an analyst from a competing fund. She manages a $300 million portfolio. She asks how your week went. You say it was fine. You do not explain the 7 sessions. You do not explain the broker rotation. You eat the dinner and talk about something else. At a certain scale, the fund does not participate in price discovery. It conducts it. The trade is not a response to the market. It is an event that the market responds to. Understanding the difference between those 2 sentences is the difference between managing $300 million and managing $4.2 billion. 5 years after the desk. Your title is Senior Investment Strategist, Sovereign Asset Allocation. You are 37 years old. You no longer manage a portfolio. You design the strategy that determines how all the portfolios are allocated. Your decisions do not move individual stocks. They move percentages of the entire fund, which, at $1.4 trillion, means that a 1% allocation shift is $14 billion redistributed across asset classes, geographies, and sectors. Your compensation last year was $987,000. You have not disclosed this figure to your parents. They live in a house that cost $212,000 in 2003. You visit at Christmas. You eat the same food you ate as a child. The distance between the house and the office is not geographical. The allocation mandate you are currently working on involves a reduction in the fund's exposure to a specific country's sovereign debt, reducing from 4.7% of the fixed income allocation to 3.1%. The country has a GDP of approximately $714 billion. The fund holds approximately $38 billion in that country's sovereign bonds. The reduction represents approximately $9.5 billion of selling pressure over a period to be determined. The country's finance ministry has become aware of the review. A meeting is requested. You attend the meeting with 2 colleagues. The finance minister attends with 4 advisors. The meeting is held in a conference room in a building that is not the ministry and is not your fund's office. The minister asks 2 questions. The first is whether the fund has made a decision. The second is whether the fund would be willing to discuss the timing. You answer both questions accurately. You tell him that no final decision has been made. You tell him that timing considerations are part of every execution plan the fund develops. You do not tell him what the outcome of the review will be, because the outcome of the review has not been finalized. You do not tell him that the preliminary recommendation, which you wrote, is to proceed with the reduction. That information belongs to the investment committee. It has not been communicated to you that it can be shared. The minister understands this. He is a sophisticated person. He knows that you are telling him what you are able to tell him. The meeting ends in 41 minutes. You shake hands. You return to the office. You write a memo about the meeting for the committee. The memo is 4 paragraphs long. It describes the meeting as a standard stakeholder engagement. That is an accurate description. It is also an incomplete one. The incomplete portion belongs to the category of things that are understood and not written down. $9.5 billion is not the largest thing you have moved at this job. It is the first time that moving it required a conversation with a head of state. You will have 17 more conversations of this type before you leave this role. They become routine. Routine is the word you use when you describe them in the memo. The word covers a significant amount of territory. At $1.4 trillion, the fund is not a participant in the global economy. It is a variable in it. Every allocation decision is simultaneously a financial decision and a geopolitical one. The people who make these decisions are not politicians. They are analysts who became portfolio managers, who became strategists, and who now attend meetings with finance ministers and write 4-paragraph memos afterward. The memos are accurate. They are also incomplete. Both things are required. 16 years after the desk. Your title is Chief Investment Officer. You are 45 years old. You have been in this building for 16 years. You have outlasted 4 governments, 3 central bank governors, 2 global recessions, 1 pandemic, and 1 attempted coup in a country where the fund held significant infrastructure exposure. All of these events appear in the annual report as line items. The fund absorbed them. The fund continues. Your total compensation last year was $4,217,000. You do not discuss this figure. There is no context in which discussing it serves a useful function. The number exists in a pay structure that was set by a governance committee that meets once a year and that is accountable to a board that is appointed by a government. The government changes. The compensation structure does not change significantly. The fund requires continuity at the senior level. Continuity is expensive. This is a known cost. The mandate of the fund is not to maximize returns. This is the thing that most people outside the fund do not understand. The mandate is to preserve and grow national wealth across generations, to transfer purchasing power from the present population to future populations that do not yet exist and cannot advocate for themselves. The investment horizon is formally defined as 30 years. In practice, the fund has no terminal date. It was established to exist indefinitely. You think in 30-year horizons the way a younger analyst thinks in quarterly horizons. The questions you ask about an investment are not primarily about near-term return. They are about what the world will look like in 20 years and whether this asset will be worth holding in that world, whether the regulatory environment will have shifted, whether the technology will still be relevant, whether the country in which the asset sits will be politically stable enough to honor its obligations. These are not questions that appear on a Bloomberg terminal. They are questions that require reading history, geopolitics, climate science, and demographic data, and synthesizing them into a view that will outlast your tenure at the fund. You have been wrong on 2 significant calls in 16 years. The first was an underweight in an asset class that performed significantly above expectations for 4 consecutive years. The cost to the fund was approximately $3.7 billion in foregone returns. You presented this to the board. The board noted it. It appeared in the annual report as a section titled Strategic Allocation Review. You continued in the role. The fund was large enough that $3.7 billion in foregone returns was a learning, not a failure. The second error you will not describe in detail. It is the type of error that teaches you something about the limits of models, about the limits of your own certainty, and about the specific humility required to manage other people's national wealth across time horizons you will not live to see the end of. The second error changed how you approach conviction. You are more certain about fewer things. This is an improvement. You have an assistant who has worked with you for 9 years. She is the most operationally capable person in the building. She manages your calendar, your correspondence, and the information flow between your office and the board. She has sat outside every significant meeting of your tenure. She knows more about the fund's decisions than anyone except you and the board chair. She earns $114,000 a year. You have advocated for her compensation 3 times in 9 years. Each time, the committee approved an increase. The increases have been incremental. You think about this occasionally. Not with guilt, with the specific awareness of someone who understands how compensation systems perpetuate themselves and who operates within one and has limited capacity to reshape it even from the top. The fund is not yours. It was here before you. It will be here after you. Your job for 16 years has been to not break it. On the metrics that matter, real returns above the sovereign mandate threshold, drawdown control, governance compliance, geopolitical neutrality, you have not broken it. This is a significant achievement. It is also the minimum requirement of the role. You do not know what you will do when you leave. The fund does not practice retirement planning for its own senior staff in the same way it practices it for sovereign governments. You have savings. You have the institutional knowledge of 16 years. You have a view of the global economy at a scale that fewer than 40 people on Earth have held for a comparable duration. What you do with that view when you leave is a question that does not yet have an answer. The question itself is a luxury. The fund gave you the luxury of thinking at this scale for 16 years. What you owe in return is not yet fully settled. The fund was not built to maximize returns. It was built to preserve national wealth across time horizons that no living person will see the end of. Managing it requires a specific kind of humility, not humility about your skill, but humility about your horizon. The fund thinks in 30 years. You will be here for 20. The difference between those two numbers is the thing you are always working around. Somewhere in a building whose name does not appear on any public list of significant financial institutions, a 29-year-old is sitting at a desk on the 14th floor. It is a Tuesday. There is a model open on 3 monitors. The model is for a $340 million equity rebalancing across 14 markets in 7 time zones. The rebalancing needs to be executed without moving prices significantly against the fund's position in any of the 14 markets. The model needs to account for liquidity windows, execution timing, currency exposure, and the fact that selling in 7 of the 14 markets will create observable pressure that other participants will respond to before the execution is complete. The 29-year-old will spend 11 hours on this model. They will find an error at 11:14 p.m. A misspecified covariance between 2 indices that would have produced a position skew of 0.3% on $340 million. They will fix it. They will send the revised model at 11:47 p.m. No one will respond. The model is their output. The decision belongs to someone else. They do not know yet what the model leads to. They do not know about the 7-session execution plans, or the dinner they will not explain, or the 4-paragraph memo, or the finance minister, or the second error they will not describe in detail, or the assistant who will sit outside every significant meeting for 9 years. They do not know that the fund they are modeling for on this Tuesday will outlast 4 governments, 3 central bank governors, and 2 recessions, and that none of those events will fundamentally change the shape of the work, because the work is not about events. It is about time horizons that dwarf events. They just know the model. They know the error they found at 11:14. They know that on $340 million, 0.3% is $1,020,000, and that finding the error matters, and that sending the revised model matters, and that the work matters, even though no one will respond tonight, and no one outside this building will ever know their name. The rebalancing executed. $340 million moved across 14 markets in 7 time zones over 4 trading sessions. Total market impact cost, $2,314,000 on a $340 million trade. The attribution report noted the execution as within acceptable parameters. No one was called into a meeting. No one's name appeared in a report. Nobody noticed. That was the point. The best trades always are. The fund was not built for anyone to notice. It was built to outlast everyone who worked there and to preserve, across generations, the wealth of a nation whose citizens will spend their entire lives interacting with an economy that this fund quietly helps to stabilize, and whose name most of those citizens will never read, in a building most of them will never know exists, on a Tuesday that looks identical to every other Tuesday on the 14th floor.